So before I actually get started, I wanted to take a second to dedicate this TED Talk to my mother and my grandmother. My parents are here to support me today, but I lost my grandmother on October 20th, 2017. So as two of the women who have taught me so much about being a good person and a successful woman, this, among the many other things that I do, is for them. So hi everyone, my name is Rachel Friars. I'm 21 years old and I'm a fourth year honors English student here at UNBSJ. And I happen to graduate in exactly 55 days. Not that I'm counting, I'm very happy. So when I started this TED Talk, I wondered about how I would get into it. And I decided that it's not really entertaining for me to stand up here and tell you all about my jobs and my projects, but suffice it to say that on top of a full course load, I have 4 jobs in the editorial, coordination, and research fields, and umpteen volunteer commitments, including this one. And while I don't think that's necessarily a unique experience for a student, it does add up to me being very busy all the time. Don't get me wrong though, I love it. I love all my jobs and my projects, and I'm so privileged to be able to work with some of the most brilliant people my school and my city has to offer. But I'll be honest with you. When I started this TED Talk on February 14th, 2018, I didn't really want to write it. And it wasn't that I didn't think my idea was worth sharing or that I was just being lazy. Earlier that day, I'd come home from a really difficult session with my therapist. We had talked about things that I didn't want to talk about, but needed to. And when I came home that night, I slept and I listened to sad music, and when I woke up, the last thing I wanted to do was be optimistic about success and mental health. Because I should clarify. I have 4 jobs, a full course load, all these volunteer commitments. I also have an anxiety disorder, issues with emotional trauma, and grief. And beyond this, I don't pretend to be an expert on mental health. Not only is it a huge umbrella header, but it has widely individualized symptoms across each person. I don't have any degrees in the subject, and I haven't devoted my life to this kind of research. But that's the thing. Most of us with mental illnesses are not experts. We're just everyday people with a little extra weight to carry. So it's important for me to give this TED Talk as a person who struggles, talking to people who might be struggling. When I first started high school, which is almost 8 years ago now, I developed both my first signs of mental illness and my desire to be successful. And as that was happening, I started to see posters and messages like this one. Some version of, "You got out of bed this morning, be proud," which translates to, "Well, for everyone else, this task is easy and everyday. For you, it is a feat of epic proportions, and you should take it as your measure of success for the rest of the day." And to some extent, I do agree. Getting out of bed in the morning can feel this way some days for everyone. But something about posters and messages like this one have always bothered me, and I think I finally figured out why. Mental illness is frustrating, it's scary, it's unwanted, and oftentimes it's a huge obstacle that gets in the way of our success. It's my theory that people with mental illnesses are never content with the "you got out of bed this morning" adage. We want to succeed, and we feel driven to succeed. In fact, getting out of bed in the morning is oftentimes the bare minimum of what we demand of ourselves and what's demanded of us. Success in every area of our lives, our jobs, our relationships, our community outreach, all of it depends on our ability to do more than get out of bed in the morning. But that's an example of something that can be easier said than done. When you're feeling poorly, as I was when I started this TED Talk, getting out of bed in the morning can seem like an insurmountable feat, but we have to do it. So how can we? How can we manage every area of our lives? How can we be devoted to the betterment of our days? As a successful person with a mental illness, I have a few ideas. Accept your mental illness. One of the fascinating and mostly universal things about mental illness is that it relies on its ability to be feared, denied, and pushed away. We tend to look at mental illness as though it's a foreign invader, as though it's something that needs to be gotten rid of as quickly as possible. We fear mental illness because it's hard to understand. We deny it because that's oftentimes easier than dealing with it head on. And we push it away because we're busy in our day-to-day lives and we don't have time to stop or even to slow down. But here's the thing. By looking at mental illness as though it's foreign, as though it needs to be eradicated, we do ourselves a disservice. Mental illness is a real part of us, and oftentimes it can be actively managed rather than completely eradicated. By accepting this fact and understanding that our mental illness is something that we need to confront and deal with every day, we can feel better in our pursuit of success. Because achieving success tomorrow means that we take care of ourselves today. And denying mental illness and pushing ourselves to the breaking point has never been a sustainable answer, and that's from personal experience. Every day might not be a good day. In fact, it's pretty much a guarantee that every day isn't going to be a good day. But if we accept that fact, and we accept that our mental illness is something that we need to manage, we can feel far freer to persevere on our good days. Understand that it's all about balance. Something that I have a hard time doing, or I guess something that I can't stop doing, is I'll have a really good day and I'll accept the first 10 opportunities that come my way. It's very easy for me to accept a million things in January that I don't actually have to do until March. And I'm not implying that because we don't know how we'll feel next week or next month, we shouldn't accept those opportunities and set those goals. But there is a very careful and necessary balance that we all need to strike. And I know how tempting it can be to have a good day or a streak of good days and accept those 10 opportunities. Because you're you, right? You're brilliant and capable and you can do it all. And while that's very likely true, having a good day today doesn't change that tomorrow might be a bad day. And it is possible to be incredibly brilliant at several different things without pushing ourselves too far. But keep in mind that just as the mental illness is different for everyone, so is the balance. And it might take several tries to figure out what we can and can't handle. Something that helped me find this balance, and something that I'm still reminding myself of, even just as recently as 15 minutes ago, is that nothing is the end of the world. As humans, we have a tendency to catastrophize. Catastrophizing is a recurring thought that a lot of us have in believing that something is far worse than it actually is. So we've all heard the phrase, "Don't cry over spilled milk," right? As condescending as that phrase can be, crying over spilled milk is a great example of catastrophizing. Believing that our lives will be over if we don't meet that deadline or finish that project can be very tempting for perfectionists and ambitious people. But most of the time, that's just not true. Rather, catastrophizing is a tool that we use to place non-catastrophic things ahead of ourselves. We are more important than a deadline or a project, and we need to always remember that. By thinking about what's really important and what really matters, we can find a more peaceful equilibrium. By accepting that the bad days come with the good, we can balance our goals with our capacity to achieve them. And yes, we should always be pushing ourselves to do the best we can in any given situation, but not to the point of overwhelming ourselves. Finally, ask for help. And I know, for those of us with a mental illness, this can seem like an old hat. And certainly, I do mean asking for help with your mental health if you think you need it. As a person who visits a therapist once a month and is extremely grateful for all the help she provides, this is a necessary step on my path to success. But I'm also thinking of another way we can ask for help. Oftentimes, extremely ambitious people feel a need to be successful on their own. When we take on something new, we have a lot to prove. And if you add a mental illness into that mix, we feel a need to overcome it. Because we all want to be seen as successful, but no one wants to be seen as different. But I think that by not asking for help, we put ourselves at a disadvantage. Friends, family, and colleagues and bosses are all wonderful systems of support and can be extremely accommodating if we let them. Ask for that day off. Ask for that extension or help with that big project if you think you need it. This is something that I've really had to work on a lot in the last 2 years. But realizing that I'm not only not a failure if I need help, but that I'm still a very successful person has been endlessly freeing. Asking for help with that project or an extension on that deadline because of a bad day or a distracted mind might make us feel weak, but it shouldn't. Having the strength to ask for help is very powerful, and we need to learn to recognize that in ourselves. Every single person in this room this morning got out of bed and came here. For some of us, that was very easy, and for others, it was very hard. But the point is, we all did it, and we all want to do it every day. While living with a mental illness and getting out of bed in the morning can sometimes be a feat, success is possible. If we accept our mental health as a real and active part of us and strike that balance between success and self-care, asking for help along the way in whatever form that takes, we can become not only more successful individuals, but more thoughtful, careful, and happier people. Thank you.